podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm Mark Crossfield, your host of this new series, where we introduce you to experts, coaches and thought leaders who share their passion for career coaching. Our aim is to provide a comprehensive and informative resource for career coaches at all stages of their careers, offering valuable insights and practical advice from experienced professionals in the industry. Each week, I meet with a coaching expert and we explore an important aspect of career coaching. Hello and welcome to another episode exploring the world of career coaching. In today's conversation, my guest is Rob Nathan, and we're talking about the role of career assessment tools in coaching today. Rob Nathan is the founder and CEO at CCS, Career Counselling Services, an organisation that provides accredited career coach training. And Rob is a pioneer in the field of career coaching in the UK, with over 40 years of experience coaching people at all stages of their careers. Rob is a chartered psychologist, visiting fellow at Kingston University, and fellow of the National Institute of Career Education and Counselling. Rob co-authored 2 successful books on career counselling and surviving unemployment. He continues to write and regularly runs workshops for professional groups in coaching psychology and career development. So, let's meet Rob Nathan. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here and very excited to be participating in the Association for Coaching podcast on career coaching. That's a fantastic opportunity. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, we're glad to have you, and we're discussing the role of career assessment tools in coaching today, particularly the use of self-assessment tools. And I wonder why these are important tools, Rob. Could you just outline why they are important?
Well, I think the emphasis is on self-assessment tools, and I think that is critical for people who are sometimes at sea or confused or just not sure what direction to go in, to get some sense of focus about the areas that really matter to them and matter in thinking about their future career pathways, such as interests and values, strengths, transferable skills, and the like. So I think rather than we do a lot of training, we find that people come along and they say, well, look, yes, it's great to have a chat, but we're not really quite sure where we're going. We're not really quite sure where the focus is. And I think these self-assessment tools provide a focus and a medium for the career coach and the coachee to have a meaningful and more in-depth, as well as probably more broad conversation.
Yeah, thank you. And I know that you've written about this. So your career counselling book, which was co-written with Linda Hill. If I can quote from that, so chapter 4, you actually say that at the first meeting, clients are usually seeking, implicitly or explicitly, clarification on self-understanding in the following areas. Who am I? Where am I now? What do I want? What do I want to be? What resources do I have within and around me? And what is stopping me from moving on? And then you go on to say, the client's own answers to these questions may be inaccurate, distorted, or limited in various ways. So, first of all, I hope that puts into context that part of the book. Is that one of the reasons why we're using those assessment forms, self-assessment forms, Rob?
I guess that individuals are prone to bias in their thinking, and that if they are relying just on their own reflections and interpretation without the use of any more systematized self-assessment tools, then they can go a bit skew-whiff. Again, I think it's just the focus that they provide. Plus, also, if you use a number of tools, then it can provide the basis for common themes and patterns to emerge, which give more validity to what's coming out. And I think that's, if anything, the way that we go. And that's why we prefer the emphasis on these self-assessment tools, which, albeit subjective, are I think, more appropriate in this coaching context than the more the more sort of top-down psychometric tests, if you like, and questionnaires.
Yeah, and I guess self-assessment also allows a good use of time as well, doesn't it? Because you can get the clients to be doing some of this work in between the coaching sessions. So I suppose it's a good way to manage time as well, isn't it?
It's a great way to manage time, Mark, and I think also in terms of managing time, and this is why we generally prefer to call them self-reflection tools rather than self-assessment tools, in that it can provide the coachee an opportunity to reflect the time between the sessions, either on their own or with any significant others. And often we find when we're coaching people that we're thinking about, or getting the client to think about, their immediate circle, because often career decisions and career development is not just done alone, but may be influenced by, or may influence significant others in the client's world. So yes, I think the use of time, yes, in the session, more efficient, but also I think between the sessions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you share a specific experience or success story that illustrates the impact of using these self-reflection tools, as you refer to them?
Yeah, well, there's one particular tool that we use called the Interest Explorer, which is a way of providing a basis for what we call a discourse analysis about people's motivations and passions. And one very significant and moving experience I had many years ago was when I saw somebody who really was quite depressed. And in the days when we were more likely to see people face to face, we would do the discussion, then we would come up together with a list of these motivation patterns or themes, if you like, at the end of the discussion. And this particular person, who, as I said, was quite depressed, took hold of the list, looked at it, and said, "Goodness me, I do exist then." Mm. So there's something about the validation of those themes and actually producing it together in situ. When you're talking about, in a sense, it's quite a light-hearted conversation, but it's producing some quite deep-seated themes that matter to people. And when they see them written down and they feel like they're owning those themes, it can make quite a significant impact. So that is a very clear example that comes to mind. Mm.
Yeah. So you mentioned the Interest Explorer exercise there. What other exercises typically would you use with a coaching client?
Well, that's one that is consistently very popular with myself and my team, and also the many hundreds and thousands of people we've trained in career coaching. The other one, well, there are many, but one really important one is called When I'm at My Best. And it's an exercise to get people to think about times in their life when they've been in flow, when they've thrived. And again, we have constructed a particular type of conversation where we, I don't know what the word is, can interrogate the person or interrogate the event, bring it alive in the person's mind's eye. So they relive it, and then to start identifying the kind of skills and strengths they used when they were in flow. And that can be an immensely rewarding exercise, quite therapeutic, to remind people of the strengths and skills they have used in the past that they could resurrect so long probably as if the conditions are right. And then we have an exercise that is a kind of companion exercise, which is called Creating My Reflected Best Self. And this is one that asks the coachee to get feedback from a number of people in their environment whose judgment they trust about times when they have seen them at their best. And again, it's incredibly moving. Sometimes the feedback people get, sometimes they use the opportunity to ask people they wouldn't normally have that conversation with. And again, they can be quite moved by it. So those two are two of the most important ones that we consistently use. There are many others as well, but at the different stages of the career conversation, because as I think you know, Mark, we have a 5-stage process. The two that I've mentioned so far, the Interest Explorer and When I'm at My Best, are very much part of the exploring stage, exploring who am I. But we have other exercises at each stage, the clarifying stage, the visioning stage, the resourcing action stage, which I can go into if you want me to. But there are exercises, there are tools that we use at different stages.
Rob, you mentioned there the 5-step process. Would you just say a little bit more about what that is?
Sure, this is what we teach on our programs and also practice and share it with clients. The first stage, which we probably wouldn't share directly with clients, is managing expectations, which is a big challenge for many people. The second, it overlaps with this, is exploring the question, who am I? What makes me tick? We talked about motivation, we talk about transferable skills, when I'm at my best, what are my values, and so on. The clarifying stage is about bringing it all together, helping a client to make sense of the exploring stage. And then we move into visioning, which often is left out of these stages, which is about really thinking out of the box about what might be possible based on what the client is looking for. And then finally looking more realistically at what is possible, doing an exercise which we call blocks and bridges, moving a client towards coming up with some realistic action plans and maybe some research plans for testing the reality of the ideas that they have. So that, in a nutshell, is the 5 stages.
Oh, thank you. And do you find that they align quite nicely with individual coaching sessions, or sometimes do you cover more than one stage in a session?
Yeah, the latter probably. Certainly to start with, we will be contracting, managing expectations whilst we're exploring. Exploring leads quite naturally into the clarifying. The visioning is kind of like a separate stage. You have to get someone really to prepare for that, particularly if it's a brainstorm or doing some visualization work, which might be verbal. It might be actually a drawings exercise, a picture exercise. I think you're familiar with those, Mark. And then finally testing the reality of any vision, so that we're not living in cloud cuckoo land, and helping a client to prepare for the next stage of research or action.
And what are the origins of these exercises? And have they impacted on you personally? Have they been part of your journey as well, Rob?
The origin, well, we have created these tools, or we've drawn them out of our experience and reading as well. I guess my own experience is that, I did my master's thesis in occupational psychology on the use of psychometric tests in what was called vocational counselling in those days, and came to the conclusion that, as all the research tended to indicate, that people didn't really integrate the results of these tests into their framework or into their plans. And I guess in terms of when I have been at my best and what motivates me, goes way back, and that I realised when I was at university that I was very much drawn to working with people. I was interested in people, how they behaved, probably quite nosy. I always remember a sociology lecturer at university saying, you'll make a good sociologist if when you look at a big building, a block of flats, you want the walls to fall down so you can see exactly what's going on inside. And I moved on to sort of occupational psychology from that. And I guess it was I didn't have any clear sense of what I wanted to do when I was younger. And I think I discovered that as I went on. I think what happens is you get feedback about yourself, and you then integrate that feedback into your self-concept. Professor Herminia Ibarra has written a very good book called Working Identity, where she very much talks about the importance of gathering feedback through your life and work experiences, which you can then integrate into your sense of self, and then integrate into any developmental or career plans that you have. So I think she would not be that comfortable with the idea of being able to plan one's career in a one-to-one session with the career coach. But I do have a lot of sympathy with this way that you unfold your self-understanding and feed that into your own career story, your own career narrative. And that's, again, I think, what I've done in my career. Is through the experiences I've had, I've learned about myself, learned about what interests me, what doesn't interest me, what motivates me, what doesn't motivate me. So I guess it's through that experience that I've evolved. And I've always been fascinated by the use of questionnaires and the impact it can have on people, getting people to think more deeply about themselves.
Thank you for the backstory. Are there any limitations with self-assessment tools that coaches should be aware of?
Definitely. I think that the word assessment, this is one, again, that I question, because clients very often look on these tools as tests that are going to tell them what to do. I often say to my clients that the fairly early on, look, I've been using these tools for many years and I built up a healthy disrespect for them. It's really you that matters. It's not really the tool that matters. We're here to have this coaching discussion, to reflect, to go deeper. And these are just tools to help us to do that. So I think it's really important that coaches are upfront and transparent about that. I think just a word about career coaching as opposed to coaching. As soon as you introduce the word career, it comes with all its preconceptions and biases, if you like. When we're young, we're kind of asked, what are we going to be when we grow up? He's the scientific one, he's the sociable one, she's the intuitive one, or whatever. And it labels people, and people start making decisions perhaps far too early. And I think the system we're brought up in, the education system, kind of straitjackets us into making decisions far too early about our choices, whether they be educational choices or career choices. And I think there's some research that says the frontal cortex of the brain, which is the decision-making part of the brain, doesn't fully develop until you're in your early or mid-20s. So I think this is very much about enabling people to have more data about themselves, which they can use to make more constructive decisions, rather than actually somebody taking away the right and ownership and power to make the decision for themselves. So when you bring the word career into the frame, it does bring in all sorts of things like parental expectations, peer pressure, the influence of significant others on you in terms of not just finances, but expectations and demands. Just a word on the impact of parental influence. I remember seeing a lawyer once who wanted to become a counsellor and had actually applied to a counselling course but couldn't quite bring herself to go along. And during the discussion we had, she said to me, I can't become a counsellor until my mother dies. And if I left the law, it would kill her. So, and you may remember, Mark, from the training that we used a couple of case studies which indicated the impact of parental influence, and that even for people in their 40s and their 50s, or maybe even beyond, is still a factor. I would disappoint my parents. How am I going to face my parents if I decide to make a change? So it's there all the time, and it's different, I think, when we bring the word career into the frame. And you very kindly quoted from my book, but if you go into the first page of chapter 1, you'll see that there's a paragraph there about achievement, about success, about recognition, about getting things right. And I think there is that in the background that if we're going to move into career coaching or coaching with a career focus, we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, that's so true. And I really resonate with what you said about the power, because we give our power away in terms of our career, perhaps because that discussion starts quite early in our lives. We never realise that we need to take back the power from our parents and our lecturers and our teachers. And for some people, they never take back the power. And, this is one of the problems that we deal with when we're meeting with clients. So you put that very well, actually, Rob. So thank you for that. So can we talk practically then? Let's talk about working with a client. And I'm very interested in how you determine which assessment tools to use with a particular client, or which self-reflection tools to use with a particular client. How do you go about doing that, Rob?
Well, I have my favourites, as you probably realised from this discussion, and I know that they work very well with the vast majority of people. But what I say to people is, look, we have a number of tools here, and we may find that some work better than others. Again, the emphasis is on you and our discussion. Let's not get too tied up with which one is the right one or which one is the wrong one. Here, I might give somebody 3 or 4 tools to have a go at. Most people will say, oh, bring it on, let's just do lots. The more, the better. I try to get people away from that. But look, if you haven't got the energy or the time to do the whole lot, do the ones that make most sense to you. Having said that, I do have my preferences. I will explain to a client what this involves, and I would try to relate the choice of the exercise to the objectives that we've set with each other. So we would always contract and manage expectations at the beginning. Someone would say to me, I'm really not clear about what direction I want to go in. So I probably won't accept that. I'd probably say, well, look, imagine a scale of clarity of 1 to 10. If 10 means you're completely clear and 1 is you're clueless, where are you now? And they'll probably say, I don't know, 4, 3, 5, something like that. So we then move them up the scale. So, well, where would you realistically like to be by the time we finish our meetings? And most people will say something like 7 or 8. So I said, well, what would 7 or 8 look like? So, well, I'd know more about what really motivates me. I'd have some ideas about what areas to look at. Okay, let's look at motivation. So you can actually find out about someone's motivation by spending quite a long time exploring their background. And in fact, as I think you know, Mark, we use this exercise called the career timeline, which is a graphical way of getting people to reflect on the highs and lows and the most significant moments of their working life. You can explore what's motivated somebody in the past, and you can also ask people what they might be interested in the future. But I think it's quite productive to use something like the Interest Explorer to get people to really identify now what motivates them, rather than think about the past, what's motivated them before, or what they might do in the future. So I think that's one tool that we might use for that particular reason. The When Am I Best tool that I mentioned, I think often people come in thinking, when am I at my worst, if you like, or they're in a bad place. They are confused, they are uncertain, they're disappointed, they feel rejected, they've lost their energy, they've lost their sense. So there's a purpose. So I think something that gives them back that sense of well-being, that sense of energy, that connection with times in their life when they've thrived, and that sense that they could resurrect some of those resources around them. So that's the reason why we would use that exercise. We then, in the clarifying stage, have an exercise called job satisfiers, which gets people to bring together their reflections on the exercises we've done in the exploring stage, so that they have more of a sense of what really matters to them in a future work scenario. And then from that, and again at the right stage, and if it's appropriate for the client, we would move into a visioning stage, getting someone to think out of the box about ideas. Maybe you do some brainstorming together. We get someone to prepare for that brainstorm. I would also do some preparation for that. Maybe then get them to do some light research, maybe get them to get some feedback from people in their stakeholder group, and so on. So it depends what stage we're at. But clearly, as you can see, I have certain preferences. But we have a very, very wide choice of different tools. What I haven't talked about so far are the career management tools that we have in addition to the career coaching tools, if you like, which is more about how I become a better manager of my career rather than how can I make better choices in my career. So that's another area, but maybe we haven't got too much time to go into that today.
That's been a useful overview of the tools you are using. And my ears pricked up a little bit when you mentioned career timeline, because that is one that I remember doing that and finding that quite a profound experience. It really did make me think about my own career and where it was and what I needed to do to try and move things along. So I found that very powerful. And I find a number of clients find that powerful as well. It's interesting that some clients are really moved by one particular exercise, whereas others are less moved, outwardly moved anyway. Sometimes, of course, change happens on the inside and we don't always see it through their face and their body, do we? So we can never be sure.
No.
But it is interesting the reactions you get, isn't it?
Yeah, you're quite right, Mark, quite right about different clients will respond differently to different tools and be moved or affected by them. And also, it doesn't happen necessarily at the time. I mean, I've had people come back to me years later saying that the work we did together didn't immediately fit into place or didn't immediately make sense, but years later it did. And whatever happened, whether they had to actually put into practice the results and get some feedback if you like, about what works and what doesn't work, and for them to realise the benefits of it. So I think, yes, if we expect kind of the wow factor, if we expect things to kind of come to complete clarity within the space of, whatever it is we usually have, say about 4 sessions of coaching, then I think we may well be disappointed. But actually, again, that feeds into managing the expectations of clients, and also recognizing that what we're doing is we're teaching someone how to fish rather than giving them a fish, if you like. So we're giving them a toolkit that they can revisit. We're giving them an experience of taking time out to reflect on themselves and who they are, which kind of reinforces the importance of doing that. And as you quite rightly said yesterday, it's about it's about reclaiming the power, if you like, their own power, so that they can actually say, well, this is me. I'm not my parents. I am not, my peers who are doctors or lawyers or accountants. I am me, and I want to do what is right for me. And the people who are important for me. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So you've mentioned a lot of these exercises, and I want to just briefly ask you about integrating these exercises in a coaching program, because the way you describe it to someone listening in, it might seem like it's a series of exercises back to back. Of course, it's not that. How do you integrate the actual exercises into how you conduct the actual coaching sessions? Tell me a little bit about the magic of how you bring all this together, Rob.
Well, I'm not sure I'd use the word magic, but it's a coaching process, as you quite rightly say, where fundamental is the use of good coaching skills, the core skills of listening and responding and questioning. And I think the integration is about contracting with the client from the word go, that we use the tools to aid the conversation rather than use a conversation to aid the tools, if you like. When we debrief an exercise, we don't expect the client to send it back to us beforehand like homework to be marked. I have had people do that and say, well, actually, this is your property, this is yours. And try to get that all the way through, that, you own this process. If there are tools that come out, you own that. If there are any particular results that we discuss, you own that as well. When we're doing our debriefing sessions on the use of any tools, then particularly now, a lot of the sessions are on Zoom, we would invite the client, if they wish, to record that session, which again encourages ownership and integration. We'd encourage them to discuss this with significant others in their life, again encouraging integration. We would have time between the sessions for them to reflect, again encouraging integration. We have tools that get people to bring together the results of the different exercise, which is like a permanent record of what they've got out of it, again encouraging integration. So all the way along, and as I said earlier on, I thought my master's thesis discovered how people were less likely to integrate the results of tests that were given to them. So that's why I place such great emphasis on the importance of contracting, that we are in this collaboratively. I'm not an expert in terms of interpreting the results. You are the expert from your life. My job is to bring that expertise to the surface through the use of the various tools.
Yeah, and it's part of them getting their power back, isn't it? Taking responsibility for that is part of that process.
It's part of them of reclaiming, if you like, maybe the bits of them that they've left behind or they've ignored or other people have dominated over. Yeah, absolutely.
Can we talk about skills now? Because this is an area that I find quite helpful in the work I do, particularly the way that you deploy it, which is around not necessarily just skills that you're good at, but the skills that you enjoy using. Can you say a little bit about how that's deployed and why that works so well?
Well, we know, don't we, that some people would define a strength as something that when you use it, it strengthens you, and a weakness that when you use it, it weakens you. So that would come out of positive psychology. I think that we all know about situations where people become good at something, but they hate what they do. And I remember years ago, a girl I think it was, said that she was very good at maths at school. Because she was good at maths, she was rewarded by her parents and teachers, and so did A-level maths. Did very well there, went to university, did a mathematically inclined subject and did well at that, and so went into computers. And I think she came to see me when she was in her late 20s, and she said to me, I hate maths, I've always hated maths. But for various reasons, she didn't have the power, if you like, and I think it's very difficult to do that when you're 15, to stand up to your teachers and parents and say, no, I'm not going to do this. There's an assumption from some people that if you are good at something, you enjoy it. And that may be true. But there's also the possibility that you may, early on, say yes to certain tasks and pieces of work which use certain skills, and you then become quite good at them. And by the time you have realized that you are not really enjoying this at all, it may be very difficult to move, and you're stuck because you're being paid rather well, etc., etc. So I think that is an issue. And I think when we make career decisions, when we make career choices in our lives, we have to take a balanced approach. It's not an either or one. It's not that there's the right career or the wrong career. And sometimes I see people who, through the coaching, bring to the surface that there is a particular reason why they hate what they're doing. And once they've brought it to the surface, it can bring about a greater perspective about what's really going on, because they may realize there are other aspects of their working lives which are valuable and they don't want to leave behind or lose. And they might find ways to tolerate the negative aspect or manage it or move gradually away from it. So one approach that I would encourage people to do is to get their clients to take the longer view rather than just be short-termist and just react to the current situation. Inevitably, we're going to see clients who need to offload, who need to talk through what they're going through right now, and that could be very negative. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to make a decision in the short term, because that could be potentially quite damaging to one's self and one's career trajectory. So we, again, get people to think more longer term. When we get to the visioning stage of our 5-stage framework, maybe to think about how they would like to be in the future based on the work that we've done in the exploring and clarifying stages. So it's based on good data. We're not getting people to just fantasize. We're getting them to maybe vision what I call a stretching reality rather than some sort of fantastical notion of what might be possible.
Yeah, I agree. That long-term perspective is very important, particularly for clients that want to make, quite a big leap in their career, that quite often a subset or some stepping stones along the way can be helpful, particularly if those stepping stones are in themselves enjoyable and attractive to the client. The big leap can often seem like it's too much of a jump initially, and I think you're right, that long-term perspective is vital, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And again, as you say, Mark, it's about getting people to take baby steps, maybe to appreciate that they can't get to point Z if they're actually at A right now. That I sometimes use the analogy of zero to hero. You need to just move gradually along that scale towards greater satisfaction, greater exposure, and learning. And the other thing is, you may remember that we've talked before about planned happenstance, about having a plan, but not being in love with that plan, being open to opportunity. So rather than being able to predict exactly the outcome of where your actions might lead you, it's about being open to chance, being open to opportunity, being open to experience, and never quite knowing what direction you're going to end up in, if end up is the right phrase. But actually, you're getting experiences, you're getting learning, you're discovering things about yourself, you're probably discovering about possible pieces of work or places you might work that you didn't know about before. So for me, the whole world of work is a very exciting place, but not one necessarily that is pinned downable in any scientific way, where you can actually match people exactly to jobs like people used to think you could. Many years ago, there were psychometric tests. there are psychometric tests that have been used to pinpoint or suggest particular suitable careers, which, nowadays, of course, this is rather off the track in terms of the reality of the working world we live in.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that Bara in the book Working Identity does so well, actually. I mean, she says that you can't think your way into a new career, that actually, once you've done your self-reflection, you understand yourself better, that actually you do have to move towards things that look interesting. You have to explore, you have to try things, because you simply can't see that far in the future to see what it is that you want at the end sometimes. So in other words, exploration, trying things, making a start is absolutely the way to go, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So using the reflection to I like your phrase of being, it's sort of almost reflecting your intentions of what you might move towards or move away from, rather than necessarily arrive at. So I liken it to, a train that's stopping at a station, and you're helping people, as the train, if you like, to see the view around them more clearly before they carry on their journey. Better armed to pursue that journey, if you like, but not necessarily knowing exactly the destination, or maybe having some idea of that destination. And I guess, again, coming back to this whole sense of rightness in career choice, that people, we've been brought up to the sense of we need to know where we're going, we need to have that sense of destination. And I'm sure it's tied up with money and security. Of course it is, but it's also tied up with status, with recognition, with a sense of belonging, with sense of identity, huge number of quite deep-seated aspects that often, when people think about careers, they don't actually immediately or initially believe to be significant or important. And I have had clients in the past who've said, gosh, I came along for career counselling and I really now understand more about myself, almost as if by saying that they are implying that self can be separated from career, which of course it can't be.
Very, very true, very true. Can you say a little bit about, so we just briefly touched on big changes in your career, or I did, and I wonder whether there's any self-reflection tools that are particularly helpful for clients that are wanting to make a big switch in their career or change industries. Are there any self-reflection tools that are particularly helpful there?
Well, I don't think there's any particular tool that's different from what I've said already. If somebody was contemplating the possibility of a big change, we would talk it through in the coaching discussion. We would use all sorts of well-worn approaches like pros and cons, balance sheet analysis, getting someone to think about what they'd be giving up and what they'd be gaining. There was some research, I forget who did it, who suggested there are 4 aspects that influence people towards change. There's the push factor. I hate what I'm doing. I can't stand it. I'm frustrated. I'm bored. I'm plateaued. The pull factor. I'm really attracted to this new job, this new career, this new place. And then there's the role models, knowing people who've made a significant change or a similar change. And then the final one is believing I'm going to be successful in making this change. So I think we would explore those factors. We'd explore the push and the pull, maybe the role models. I might encourage somebody to talk to people they know who've made significant changes. If it's into a particular field, I would encourage someone to use their resources, their contacts, if they have them, or get them to think of ways in which they could access those contacts. I think when you're talking about a significant change, it's not about suddenly doing that, but as you said early on, it's about baby steps, it's about stepping stones, it's about experimenting. One of the problems, I think, is when you are in a particular career, you know people in that career, you know the language of that career. You're not familiar with the language and people of the career that you might have set your sights on, and therefore all sorts of self-limiting beliefs might come in that prevent you from making the initial steps towards doing something about it. So you probably need to start developing informal contacts in that field that you've identified, to test the water, if you like, to experiment, to see if there is indeed an opportunity that you might be able to begin working on. So I think I think Herminia Ibarra would agree with this. It's about getting yourself into a position where you can begin to learn the language and speak the language, because we live in fairly isolated sort of career sets, and the more technical that we have become, the more I think isolated also we've become from each other. So there's no particular tool that I would use. It's more of an approach and an intuitive response to somebody's needs in the moment, maybe feeding into the approach they could take in their research once they've finished the coaching.
That's helpful, because quite often clients come to coaching not really understanding themselves particularly well, but equally not really understanding what's out there either. So you've got a double challenge as a career coach. You've got to deal with the client that needs to understand themselves better so they can create some interesting options for themselves, but also they don't understand necessarily the market very well, and helping them to understand that better, learn more about that, can be really helpful for them to make pathways to new careers, can't it?
I don't know about understanding the market. I think it's about knowing the steps that you need to take in order to get to know a particular market better. And when people realise there's no quick fix, then either they may reflect and review the situation and decide that a big change is not such a good idea, or they may take. What some people have done is they take a break. They take a break, such as if they can afford to do it, a year of travel, doing some study, doing some voluntary work, maybe reducing the number of hours that they're working, and perhaps experimenting and researching in the extra time that they've got. Again, it's about getting clients to realise there are no sort of quick fixes, and they can't suddenly move from one area to another, unless, of course, they say, right, I'm going to start my own business, right? And I know I've had 15, 20 years working for other people. Now it's time for me. And that, again, may hatch over time as somebody develops their ideas and confidence and a business plan and so on, until such time they say, no, I'm going to do it now. And as you know, I've trained many people on our Association for Coaching accredited training programs who have moved into self-employment using the vehicle of the career coaching training in order to do that. So it may well be that we get someone to think about training that could put them into a better position to move into their desired status in the future, which could be self-employment. Yeah.
It's a fascinating conversation, Rob, and we've reached the last question actually, and it's a question that I've been asking all my guests, and that is, what is your best advice for career coaches to help them to deliver consistent results for their clients?
Well, that's as you know, Mark, I don't give advice. I tend to enable people to think through things for themselves, and possibly there's a link there. It's about being able to establish what is consistently successful for you as a career coach. Don't judge yourself too harshly. Look for the positives. Reflect on your coaching regularly and what you're doing well, what you could improve on. It's an area where we're all growing in and learning in. Have regular supervision with peers and with colleagues to check the efficacy of what you're doing. Make sure you build an evaluation from the client as well. It's a continuous process of learning, and accept that you're never always going to get it right. But actually, as in any coaching, it's going to be there's going to be the rise and fall of good rapport, a great sense of discovery, insights, light bulbs going on, and there'll be times when that doesn't happen as well. And maybe it's just about accepting it, so not allowing ourselves to fall victim to the expectation that we have to get things absolutely right. So I think, like any coach, it's about evaluating your performance, And I know you've also been talking to someone about ethics, and I think taking an ethical approach, making sure that is consistent around confidentiality and around monitoring your own coaching presence, your commitment to learning and developing. I think all those things, to me, they're the most important aspect of doing coaching well, consistently, rather than punishing yourself for not being a brilliant coach all the time.
Thank you, Rob, and so glad that we had self-reflection in there as well. A nice match up with our discussion today. That we can reflect on our own progress, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Rob, where can listeners connect with you? How can they connect with you?
Well, I'm a CEO of Career Counselling Services. They can log on to career-counselling-services.co.uk. They can email me at rob@career-counselling-services.co.uk. Delighted to interact with anybody, answer any questions, and thanks for the opportunity, Mark.
No, appreciate it. And thanks for coming along. And to summarise what we've been talking about, we've discussed today the benefits and limitations of using self-reflection tools in career coaching. Rob has highlighted some of the most common career self-reflection tools he uses and how they can support clients in their career coaching work. Rob explained how he determines which assessment tools to use with a particular client or situation, and provided examples of how he integrates assessment tools with other coaching techniques to create a comprehensive coaching program. Finally, Rob recommended some assessment tools for clients looking to switch careers or industries, and provided insights on how to help clients identify transferable skills. Rob Nathan, once again, thanks for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you very much, Mark, for having me. Cheers for now.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advance the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insight from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.